Have you ever had that feeling? Like the walls were watching you? Like you were being followed, but there was no one there? Well, that's what happened to me on the night I worked the graveyard shift at Loveless Cafe in Tennessee. And trust me, it's not a feeling I'll ever forget. It was one of those rainy, stormy nights, the kind that makes everything feel heavier. The air was thick, and the lights flickered like they were trying to tell me something. Loveless Cafe isn't anything special from the outside, old, worn down, with a sign buzzing faintly in the distance. But I didn't care about the diner's looks. I just needed a job. I'm Nathan, 34. Things weren't going well for me. I lost my job as a cook in a fancy restaurant. I lost my girlfriend, and I even lost my apartment. All in one go. Now I was crashing on couches, avoiding debt collectors, and desperately searching for a way to get back on my feet. When I saw the ad for the job at Loveless Cafe, I didn't think twice. They needed a night shift cook, room and meals included. It wasn't glamorous, but it was my last chance. When I first walked in, I should have known something was off. The smell of grease was thick in the air, and the place looked like it hadn't been cleaned since the 90s. But I needed this job. The manager, Paulie, was waiting for me. He wasn't friendly, didn't offer any introduction, just tossed me an apron and pointed toward the kitchen. Get to work, don't mess up. That was all I got from him. I followed him to the kitchen. It was even worse than the rest of the place. Greasy floors, a fryer that hissed angrily, and a griddle covered in layers of burnt grease. Nothing about this place felt right, but I couldn't turn back. As I started working, my eyes wandered across the counter, and I noticed something strange, an old greasy menu sitting on the prep table. At first I ignored it, but something about it made me reach for it. As I wiped it clean, the light from the overhead bulb caught something under the grease. Faint letters were shimmering beneath the surface. I picked it up. The words were written in a faint, uneven hand, like someone was in a rush to get them down. And what I read next made my blood run cold. Rule 1, never let the fryer sit idle after midnight. Rule 2, if the freezer door knocks, do not open it until 2:15 a.m. sharp. Rule 3, only serve biscuits to customers who ask for them twice. Rule 4, wipe down the counters every hour even if they're clean. Rule 5, if the jukebox plays Ring of Fire on its own, unplug it immediately. Rule 6, never under any circumstances taste the food. I laughed nervously. Was this a joke? I called out to Paulie, but he didn't answer. The diner was silent, only the hum of the fryer and the crackling jukebox in the corner. I shrugged it off. It was probably some local tradition or a prank Paulie pulled on new guys. But as the night went on, the strange feeling started to grow. Something wasn't right. The diner, which had felt somewhat alive when I first walked in, was now dead quiet, except for the hum of the fryer and the occasional rumble of a truck passing by. I glanced at the clock. Midnight had come and gone. The air in the diner felt heavier, like the walls themselves were closing in. The fryer was bubbling away, but suddenly it stopped. There was no hiss, no sizzle, just silence. I stared at it, heart pounding, as the oil sat perfectly still, like a black mirror reflecting nothing. I approached the fryer, trying to shake off the unease. But the moment I touched the basket, the fryer erupted. Hot oil splashed into the air, burning my arms and face. I stumbled back, yelping, as the fryer hissed again, this time like it was growling. I could have sworn something moved in the oil, a ripple beneath the surface that didn't belong. But when I blinked, it was gone. I grabbed a towel to wipe my face, trying to calm down. But the chill in the air only grew stronger. Something was wrong. Paulie had vanished. I was alone. I forced myself to keep working, grabbing another basket of fries and throwing them in the fryer. It sizzled obediently this time, but the feeling of being watched didn't leave me. I felt eyes on me, but when I looked around, there was no one. Then I heard it, the faint hum of the jukebox. It was playing by itself. Ring of Fire, the jukebox that no one had touched all night. I froze. The rule flashed through my mind. If the jukebox plays Ring of Fire on its own, unplug it immediately. I took a step toward it, my feet heavy. The room was colder now, the air thick. I reached for the plug. Just as I touched it, The music stopped, and the jukebox flickered one last time before going silent. I turned around to head back to the kitchen, but there he was. A man sat at one of the booths, his face hidden in the shadows. I hadn't heard the door open. He was just there, hunched over a plate of food that wasn't even on the menu. He looked up at me and asked in a low, gruff voice, "Can I get some biscuits?" I stared at him, my heart racing. The rule from the menu flashed in my mind. Only serve biscuits to customers who asked for them twice. I forced myself to speak, trying to hide the panic creeping into my voice. Uh, sure, coming right up. I went back into the kitchen, my hands shaking. He had only asked once, but the rule was clear. What if he asked again when I brought them out? But when I returned with the biscuits, he hadn't moved. The shadows around him seemed to grow deeper, swallowing the light.